Welcome to the Business Grind, where we give you an inside perspective on what it takes to start, build, and run a successful business. Here are your hosts, Danny Shaw and Sean Michael Wellington.
Hello, everyone in podcast land today. Thanks for joining us. Sean, how are you feeling?
Feeling good, feeling American, feeling like we about to talk about America's team.
All right, America, let's get into it. So it's been a minute, so I hope things have been good on your side of the world.
Yeah, can't complain over here. How about you?
Yeah, it's been busy, it's been good, but it's been mostly good. Just been busy, you know what I mean, as with life. So but I'm glad we got, as always, we've made some time to get back to what we like to do, which is chop it up about business and things like that. So I'm feeling good and ready to get into this latest episode,
Right. And then for today's episode, you decided to pick my favorite team, but not because it's my favorite team, just because they had a good documentary out on Netflix that's kind of business related.
Yeah, happenstance, right? So today's episode, we're talking about the Netflix documentary, America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys. So it's an 8-episode look at Jerry Jones, who is the owner of the Dallas Cowboys NFL football team. So it's a look at him, the Dallas Cowboys, and their dynasty in the 1990s, So it's storytelling and things like that speaks to it. So I watched it. I think I just watched it because I like football, and I was like, let me watch this and see what's up. Full disclosure, I'm not a Cowboys fan like that. Like, I like football, I'm not a Cowboys fan though. I didn't necessarily know a lot about Jerry Jones. Like, I know, as a football fan, I know who Jerry Jones is. I know the Cowboys, but I don't know the story of them, right? So I just watched it, and one episode got into another, and after I finished, I was like, hey, Sean, I think this is a business episode right here, business grind episode,
Yeah, and then I was almost on the opposite end of the spectrum because I am a fan, and because of my troubled history as a fan, and any other fan can relate to, I was avoiding the documentary. I was like, I don't want to watch the good times. I don't want to relive the good times. That's so far away. But yes, you convinced me that this was actually worth it, and I did learn a lot because there's a lot of information that just through the passage of time, and I didn't know a whole lot about Jerry either.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's just funny. I was like, hey, and I didn't even know you were like a fan. So I can see from a fan's perspective, especially the recent history of the Cowboys team. You're like, nah, we're not reliving them glory days. We need new things to celebrate, right?
Right. Jerry's still at the helm, so he's to blame. But anyway, let's get into it.
Yeah. So I will say one thing that kind of got me out the gate. This is Danny, a personal thing. The music that they use, they use the I think it's called the score or the theme music from the Western film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Is that where that sample's from? Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about that same sample that Jay-Z used in Blueprint too.
I assume that's exact same sample. They used it in the Jay-Z song for the Blueprint 2 song. They use it in a lot of commercials. Like, I know they use it like in a Modelo beer commercial or something like that.
Yeah, Modelo uses that a lot. Yeah.
I will say, for me personally, whenever I hear that, no matter what, it gets me going, right? Like, it's a real, I don't know what it is about that. So they started playing that 2 minutes into the documentary, and I was like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, me too. Jerry's just walking through tunnels and through his offices, and you just hearing that music. Yeah,
I'm like, oh, this is about to be good, like just off the score that they use. I was like, oh, we about to get, this is not what I thought it was going to be out the gate. So, just from a style perspective, before we even get into the business, the style of how it was shot, I really liked the colors, the shots of Jerry Jones, how they started off the intro and introducing the players that was going to be featured in this documentary. I was like, oh, I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't that out the gate, So I was like, it's I'm going to be in for something. But yeah, I guess we could just go right into it, like how it shapes out, how they start introducing the players and the people. And it really goes into early on just Jerry Jones and how he started. And Yeah, he was a quote unquote oil man. He was in the oil drilling business, which I have no insight into how that world works. All right.
Me
So,
either. He gave us a little bit of insight though
right.
into like the debt he accumulated.
Yeah, this man really um got into a lot of debt and borrowed a lot of money early on in the business to kind of bankroll and be successful in that business. And at the time, he was not successful. He was not doing well, and he was taking on a lot of debt, and people were getting worried and concerned. But he did strike at he did at one point. Uh, I can't talk. He did find a oil well that started producing a lot of oil and made him very successful and rich. And from there, he went to buy the Dallas Cowboys, right? And so,
Yeah, and that's quite a crazy, like, to me at least, it's a crazy transition from oil baron to owner of football team.
right,
So,
right. I agree. And then early on, I was trying to put the piece together, like how you go from oil baron to saying it's always been my dream to buy the Dallas Cowboys. Like how does that become your dream in the back of your head, while back of your mind, while you are this oil man, right? Um, and I just think it's like it's kind of like, well, I sold this business that's highly successful to buy an existing quote unquote successful business already and transition there, and I'm gonna turn that into something else, right? And my understanding is that at the time, when he did buy the Cowboys, they called him crazy. The media people, they hated it. It was just it wasn't received very well, right?
not at all. And then a lot of it was about the fact that he was not from
He
Texas,
was
which
not.
Arkansas is like right there. It's not that far from Texas, but I get it. I get it. Texas pride. So.
Right, Texas pride. So he definitely was ruffling feathers. Now, I will say they did show the clips of that news conference when he brought the team. Oh, it was a bit cringy. I ain't gonna. it wasn't. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best news
It
conference.
was the 80s. We gotta remember
It,
that.
it was the 80s. That is true. Was it the 80s or the 70s? Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a different point in time, but not a lot of media training. Not a lot of They was winging it. Nobody was happy, and it's just funny because I'm looking at the footage of this press conference, and you see like you could see people in the room who knew they were being fired, like they were not gonna be with the organization moving forward. And not to laugh at it, but it's just like this seems so surreal that all of this is happening like the way it was happening. It was just
Right.
there was not any, I guess, smoothness about any of it. It was just like I brought this team. We gonna figure it out along the way. They fired Tom Landry, and to people who are not familiar with football or just or the Dallas Cowboys specifically, Tom Landry was like a very highly revered coach in the Dallas organization, right? Like legendary, part of the DNA of the Cowboys prior to Jerry Jones buying the team. So just all of those moves was just like it ruffled the people. Were not happy with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Landry is one of the most famous coaches in all of football, right? You think
Right.
of Vince Lombardi and you
Yeah.
think of Tom Landry and Madden, right? Those are
Right.
like some of the names that you think of immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But before, like that was, and I get it from a fan perspective of this legendary coach, Tom Landry, you're firing him.
Mm-hmm.
But then we heard the stories on the other side of things of him falling asleep in meetings and
Mm-hmm.
forgetting players' names.
Mm-hmm.
And they even showed a couple of clips of him calling Michael Irvin, what do you call him? Michael, you call him something else.
Something else.
Yeah.
He didn't
You
call
call him
yeah.
Mitchell Irving or
Yeah.
Michael Irving or something. So like he was in decline. Like,
yeah, he was definitely in decline. And I think that's the challenge of a lot of people, especially when it comes to sports and stuff. Is like, it's hard. It's like you can respect and appreciate what the person did bring to the organization and the team, but at what point do you decide it's time to cut ties? Especially when it's noticeable that they are on the decline, right? And they're not who they used to be. And I think I think it's looked as like Jerry. A lot of people looking at it just from the team perspective, like the Cowboys is a team, but I think for him, it was like, hey, it's a team, but this team is a business model, and we need to reset it. We need to reset the business model because this model is not really working at the time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So why did you, which I wish they went into a little more, they didn't really get into, I guess, the reasons from his perspective why the previous owner, and his name is slipping me, why he wanted to sell the team. Like, we knew they weren't doing well, but we never really got into his mental space of why he would want to sell the team. Because Jerry tells that story about how they haggled over the last, what was it, $600,000 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested into. He was clearly trying to unload the team.
He was trying to
get rid of the team, for sure, but you're also, you're nitpicking $600,000 at the end. I don't know. It's an interesting concept.
I'll say this from my perspective. Sometimes, at least the things that I've read about and the case studies I've seen and just the interviews I've watched over business owners and even myself when I've made my own deals and stuff, at a certain point, sometimes it's not about the final number and the money. Sometimes it's about the ego. You know what I mean? Like, the 600,000 isn't really the issue. It's the ego. It's like, I can't feel like they got over on me. You know what I mean? Like, more so than what is that 600,000 gonna do really in the grand scheme of things, right?
You know what? You're absolutely right, because even Jerry, in describing that, he described it as a loss. He was like, "All right, so he got me for $600,000, but I made out okay." Right. So it's like he felt it's still an L, even though he had $1 billion, the biggest franchise in all the world. That's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of times it's at a certain point it just becomes about the ego, right? And I think for the previous owner, at least from what Jerry was saying, Jerry was losing $1 million a month. So I could see like the previous owner just like, all right, let me unload this. But at the end of the day, that ego is still going to be there, especially when you get to that level and you're playing those type of business deals and those type of games. You gotta either unload and figure it out. But I do think from Jerry's perspective, at least as I started watching more episodes, Jerry saw the potential. He saw the underpriced assets, like the deals, and we'll get more into it, like the deals with the stadium, the TV contracts, the merchandising. He knew a lot. He had a vision for that, about like the brand equity, before that even became like a buzzword nowadays in business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So all right, so he brought the team, and then, but the team was trash. Right? Team was trash. Yeah. But they did have a star player, Herschel Walker.
Right.
Which coincidentally, now Herschel Walker, at least from what I just saw in the headlines recently, Herschel Walker has been named the U.S. ambassador to the Bahamas, which is cool. Interesting, right? But at the time, Herschel Walker was, I guess, considered the best player in the NFL at the time, or one of the best.
Definitely in the top. Yeah, definitely. Right. I think Lawrence Taylor might have been in that conversation too.
Fair enough. Yeah. So one of the best NFL players in the league at the time, but was on a bad team. And they traded him for some draft picks and they traded him away for some future planning, some picks that would help them in the future and help them get to where they needed to, where they were trying to go. And even then, that trade was like trashed in the media as well, right? Like, how do you trade away one of your biggest assets, whoop, for all these players and these no names and things like that? And they didn't see the value. And I think, that trade actually turned out to be like a blessing in disguise, or they planned it out in a way that worked for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so we could talk about the trade, which I didn't understand all the nuances of it, but it was essentially, hey, we'll trade this player away for, I think it was 5 other picks, but if those picks that they got on the team, if they waive that player, meaning that they don't re-sign those players, they get 5 new picks or something like that. 5.
You described it pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Yeah. So they didn't keep those players, which allowed them the option to get 5 more other players. in the future, which turned out to be like the one of the key deals that started setting them up for future success, right?
Right.
Right. So, so we talked about the trade. We talked about Jerry Jones. I know it's a lot of moving pieces because it's a lot of things that kind of contributed to this success. So, the trade. Can we talk about Jimmy Johnson for a second?
I would like to, yeah,
Yes, let's
because
talk
that
about
was
Jimmy.
also a big, like you started to, you mentioned Tom Landry being let go, but
Right,
his
right.
replacement was Jimmy Johnson, right? Who
Okay.
was like made his name in college and was this big University of Miami, like,
Right, right.
this eccentric coach with this personality. And he
Uh-huh.
actually coached Michael Irvin,
You're
who
right.
ended up being a Cowboy later on.
Right. So let's talk about that. So Jimmy Johnson is the coach was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones brought him in, and he was also the coach of Michael Irvin, who is the star wide receiver of the Cowboys during their dynasty. And I thought it was funny because Michael Irvin said, "Hey, my coach told me, hey, if you get drafted, I think he told him like, hey, I'm probably going to be coaching this team, so lay low and don't go to any other, basically make sure you get to the Cowboys because I think I'm gonna be over there too, right?"
Yeah, I'll see you over there.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
see you over there. Them
Which I
back
feel
door.
like now is like a fine and
Oh,
tampering or
you
something.
getting fined? You're getting fined in 2025. You're getting fined. You're getting penalized. You might lose a draft pick. There's some repercussions coming from that type of conversation in 2025 for sure. Yeah. But Jimmy Johnson, I did not realize how intense Jimmy Johnson was.
Yeah, he's out there, bro. He's intense. Yes.
Right. But he came in to take over the team and to change the culture of the team and how they played. And, my understanding was it wasn't well received by a lot of the veteran players, right? So, he definitely had to change the culture, get rid of some players. I thought it was interesting how they said Michael Irvin was the inside man. Michael Irvin was like, "Yeah, you're right." Michael Irvin was giving names to the coach, like, "This guy gotta go. This guy, he don't fit the mission, right?" And that does happen a lot in business when you are brought in to kind of change the culture, change the fit, reorganize things, and there's gonna be people who are okay with a culture of, I guess, losing or underperforming, right? Like they're happy with the status quo. And Jerry Jones came in and was like, that's not what we're doing here. We gotta, we gotta change things, which goes into the classic, in my opinion, the classic argument, like, does culture beat strategy, right? That's like one of the biggest business debates, at least I remember when, early on in my business knowledge journey, that used to be one of the biggest debates and questions, like, does culture beat strategy and XYZ or talent? I
Right.
think, and I think, I always say the culture, maybe I didn't always say, I think maybe my views have changed over the years, but I do think culture is definitely the winner 9 times out of 10 on what will make a business successful at the end of the day, right? So Jerry Jones comes in, he's whipping folks into shape. He's telling people he don't care if y'all got asthma, then y'all don't belong in this field and stuff like that. It was wild stuff. It was some wild stuff. But they start turning the ship around, right? Uh, but let me pause for a second. So we have Jerry, because I know there's a lot of pieces to this successful. We have Jerry Jones. We got Johnson, the head coach. And then we also have the players. You want to speak to that a bit, Sean?
Yeah, but I mean, before we move on from Jimmy Johnson, I think
Okay.
it was just interesting, and you alluded to it a little bit. The
Uh-huh.
culture
Uh-huh.
that Jimmy Johnson kind of established in Miami, right?
Uh-huh.
The culture of winning. He's obsessed with winning. He hates
Absolutely.
losing. I think that's what attracted Jerry to him, really. Like that's the qualities, the culture that he wanted to build for the Cowboys. So I just thought that was interesting, and like you said, that goes right into the players they chose because the triplets, right? We got the emergence of the triplets after that, that trade. And we got, Emmitt Smith. They got Emmitt Smith.
Right.
We already talked about Michael Irvin. And
Right.
then Troy Aikman was the
Troy
piece of
Aikman.
resistance that's made it all come together. So they
Right.
had that offensive juggernaut right there.
Right. That was that, and that's what I remember as a kid. I remember, those cowboy uniforms and the triplets. Irvin, Emmett, Troy Aikman. Like they were everywhere, commercials, TV,
Superstars.
Superstars. Once the success started rolling, and the success didn't come right away. It took a few years before they got the engine moving, but once they were there, it was there, right? They was rolling. They were everywhere, and at least I was a kid, so maybe my memory is different. At the time, at least from what I could see, there didn't seem to be a clash of egos between those three, right?
No, not at all.
Right,
they
and
complemented each other.
yeah,
If anything,
yeah, they complement, which I'm like, oh, that was a good thing to see, because especially in sports. I mean, even in business. This is business and a sports episode, right? But a lot of times in business, once the success starts coming, and in sports, the ego starts coming. Like, oh, they wouldn't be successful without me, or this. I'm the reason. And from the players' perspective, at least I saw it, the players really complement each other. I didn't really get any sense of friction between the players. But we had friction in other arenas once the success started coming, right?
Right. And it really goes back to what you were just talking about, strategy and culture, because that's an example of the strategy working, right?
Right.
You have a top draft pick running back who went on to be the, one of the leading rushers in NFL history in Emmitt Smith, right? So you got your running game, but Mike Irvin is this top wide receiver that killed it out in Miami. So you got your passing game too, along with Troy Aikman, who's like a solid quarterback. So that's strategy very much so, but you got Jimmy Johnson with the culture bringing it all together. So, Jerry, this is Jerry in his prime. This is when Jerry was doing his thing, even though he always got flack and he always got criticism for his actions. But this is where him going against the grain helped the Cowboys.
Right. And as they mentioned their motto when they were on the field, we'll beat you by what was it, by land or by air, right? So
right.
And I was like, you can't be mad at that, right? That was a nice little strategy to have. But while the players didn't seem to have an ego with all the success, and they were gelling pretty well together, the owner and the head coach was friction city. The friction, once it seemed like when they were failing and were not doing well, they were tight, but then once the success started coming, that's when the egos and the friction between the owner and the head coach started happening. And I just felt that was so unfortunate watching that, to see that. I don't think I was fully aware during it. I know I wasn't fully aware because I wasn't paying attention to the politics of sports like that as a kid. But that I wasn't.
Not at all. Nope.
Yeah, and I was just like, this. Every time I saw the friction between them two, and you see the footage, I was just like, stop, stop, yo, chill. Y'all gonna mess it up. But they just, the egos they really couldn't help themselves, right?
Not at all. Like you said, it's kind of the ongoing running theme throughout this thing is like, things are going good. You have good strategy, and you have good culture, but egos kind of throw things out of whack.
Right. So maybe we could speak a little bit to the ego and the what caused what I perceived to cause the friction, and what you give me your take. As the success started happening, right? I think it was a matter of who gets the credit for this success, right? And I think Jerry Jones he's the owner, and let's step back a bit. Jerry Jones is the owner of this business and this team, and he's very hands on, right? You have different type of ownership styles. Some owners, they delegate to their lieutenants, right, and the executive board, and whoever they need to bring in to help run the business. And Jerry Jones has that primarily with his family and his kids and stuff, and with his coach. But Jerry is very hands-on. The players that gets picked, the plays, even now I think he's still on the sidelines on the games. You know what I mean? That's not really the behavior of a lot of owners in the league, and he runs things a bit different than traditional standard NFL owners. So as they started getting the success, it seems to be a clash of the egos on who was getting credit, whether it was because of Jerry Jones and his ownership and how he managed the team, or was it because of Jimmy Johnson and his coaching and the culture that he brought into the locker room, right?
Right. Exactly how you described it. It was a ego clash over who's responsible for this turnaround and the success.
Right.
And in reality, it's all of y'all.
Right.
It's everybody
It's everybody.
contributed.
Yeah. But they just couldn't get out of each other's way. And again, to me, I was just amazed at watching the footage. Like, it was ridiculous. It felt very ridiculous to me, right? Like, you're literally winning Super Bowls, and in real time, as you're winning Super Bowls, you could see the tension in real time. And I'm like, nah, this can't be happening, right? And then they do like these joint interviews together where they're trying to dispel all the rumors, and even them joint interviews they did together, I'm like, I don't know, it's pretty clear to me y'all don't mess with each other like that, right? And it really didn't have to be, but I think when so the story of Jerry Jones saying, "Hey, I can find what was the exact, I don't know the exact quote, but it basically alluded to, I can find 500 other people that can coach this team to a Super Bowl, and basically saying it's not the coach who is responsible for the success of this team, right?
And I think that's just one of Jerry's first major. There'll be more as we go down, but that was one of his first major mistakes, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that yeah, I could see that was kind of I was like, we didn't have to go here. We didn't have to take it to this level, right? Of the ego bashing. But it's football, it's ego, it's aggression, it's testosterone, it's all of those things, and it's still business, right? So you have all of those ingredients, and I just feel like it's gonna definitely be a recipe for disaster, And then when you start thinking about the money, the reputation, and legacy that's involved in this type of dynamics, it can get chaotic, right?
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about who he replaced Jimmy with, right?
That's what he did. Yeah. Go for it. Take it away.
No, I'm saying Barry Switzer. It might be a name. I don't know. You tell me as a non-Cowboys fan. Like, we all know that name, but I don't know if the general public is aware of him.
Let's talk about this. So, my memory, I know the Barry Switzer name. Like, it's familiar to me as a football fan. Like, you know the names. You may not know their history and resume, but I knew the name Barry Switzer. I didn't know his role in the Cowboys story, right? But I did know the name, and the documentary started putting the pieces together. So that I'll leave it at that and give it back to you to speak more on Barry Switzer. Yeah.
I mean, this is a business podcast, right? This would be like, swapping out your CFO or your COO. Let me put it more specifically. It'll be like swapping out an aggressive gambler. That's what the name of the documentary is, right? A gambler CFO for a conservative, long play CFO. You know what I mean? They went from Jimmy Johnson, who is intense. He puts everybody through it. There's this famous story, which I don't think is in this documentary, but it was in another Cowboys documentary about their Super Bowl wins, where Troy Aikman, the star quarterback, was late for the bus after they won the NFC Championship game, and the bus left him. The starting quarterback, they didn't wait for him. Wow. And that's how serious they were about, their philosophy and their intensity. Whereas Barry Switzer came in and he was a lot more laid back, and that just didn't, it changed the culture of what they were doing. So.
Wow, see, I wasn't even aware of that. I mean, clearly, because I don't follow the story and the lore of the Cowboys like that. But that makes a lot of sense, just considering how Jimmy Johnson is, right? That's interesting. And now that you mention that, because there are parts in the documentary where Troy Aikman, the star quarterback, was not really happy with Barry Switzer's coaching style early on. And even though to me, it seemed like Troy Aikman had some friction with Jimmy Johnson, but he liked that friction because it brought the best out of him. Whereas
literally, yes, he enjoyed that kind of friction.
Yeah, right? He enjoyed that friction and brought the best out of him. Whereas with Switzer, it was like, come on with this nonsense. So, yeah. But let's step back before we get to Switzer. And I do like your analogy because I didn't even think about it like that. I have a different analogy I'll speak to in a second. So ultimately, Jimmy Johnson, the coach of the Cowboys, and Jerry Jones, they won 2 Super Bowls together, but the friction was just was too much tension, and they decided to part ways after winning 2 Super Bowls together, right? Which is kind of
All
wild.
because they're fighting over who's the gets the credit for
Right,
it.
who gets the credit? And Jimmy Johnson says, "I'm good." Now, Jerry Jones did mention that he felt a sort of way because at the time there were also reports that Jimmy Johnson, the head coach, was talking to other teams at the time about possibly coaching there. And to me, it felt kind of weak. I felt like that was a weak argument to be mad about personally. I felt that was a bit weak. Jerry tried to kind of justify his feelings that he felt like Jimmy Johnson kind of started the rift by talking to these other teams, which I felt kind of weak. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and then we get to the replacement of Barry Switzer. Now it's interesting that you framed it that way as what that replacement kind of looks like. To me, it felt like you are replacing a seasoned, experienced veteran who has proven success on this level and has gotten me multiple accolades and awards. And now I'm replacing this person is being replaced by someone who hasn't played in over 5 to 6 years. Right?
That's a great way to look at it too. That's true.
Barry Switzer hadn't, if I'm not mistaken, he hadn't coached in close to 6 years, 5 to 6 years, and he was coaching on the collegiate level last, right? So that was his experience. It's not like he didn't have a career. It's not like he didn't have experience, but he's about 5, 6 years removed from the game. The game changes so fast and moves at a rapid pace. And now, not only is he coming in, he's being put into coach, which we can, a lot of times, the coach is the manager. So you have to manage a Super Bowl winning team. Not even caliber. They've already won the Super, they are champions. And you have to manage these champions and trying to get them to continue that success after the beloved coach was let go, right? So honestly, that's damn near an impossible mission to try to succeed on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and Jerry in his mind thought he was the secret sauce. So
Right. So there we go. So we get into Barry's style, and Barry has a whole different style of management. I guess he gave more love, I guess, for lack of a better word. He was more compassionate. He was more, I don't want to say soft, because I don't think, it was just different, right? Whereas Jimmy,
it was just different, different philosophy.
Jimmy was all in your face, and Barry was like, "Well, let me talk to you. What's going on? How are we doing? Let me try to lead with more empathy." And as you start getting into some of the backstories of these players, and seeing how they tick, and by Barry shared the story about his mother and her committing suicide and the challenges of that and how it made him feel and how it changed him as a person, and even the interactions that he had with her right before she went and took her life. That to me it's like, well, there we go. I understand a lot of why he behaves the way he behaved and why he approaches his job the way he did, as opposed to Jimmy Johnson, where Jimmy Johnson, when he took that job with the Cowboys, he divorced his wife. He told his wife, like, we're done, because I got to dedicate the rest of my life at the moment to this team, right? So totally different approaches to life, and just to the game as a whole, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just different. And Jerry probably appreciated Jimmy Johnson's gesture more than... but then again, Jerry wants whoever he can control too.
Right.
Day, so.
Right. Jerry definitely likes to be in control. Absolutely. So I do want to step back for a bit, right? And just talk about, when they talked about how the way Jerry moves, there's a lot of things that I do like about how Jerry moves, which, he pulled people from his past to help with the future success, right? And it wasn't like, oh, I just met this person 2 years ago. It was like, no, it's deep roots here. It's deep roots here. Like, Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson were college roommates, right? They were college roommates. They were on the same football team, and they won a championship together. And the feeling, uh, and watching Jerry Jones, tell that story, and you're seeing the old footage, and Jerry is like explaining the feeling he had, and during that time, and the kinship, and the camaraderie, and the feeling of success, and what it felt like to be a part of that success, and he just always wanted to recreate it.
Chasing that high.
Oh
Yep.
my goodness, I was touched by it. I was like, wow, I can this I can mess with this. I appreciate it. At least he was able to explain his motivation and his purpose, right? Everyone has their own motivation and purpose on why they're doing things, and to watch someone to say, "Hey, this is why I do this." I was like, say less. I get it. I may not agree with all your moves and stuff, but at least you are very clear on how you're trying to move and why you do what you do, you know?
Yeah, totally. And that was educational for me too, because I hadn't heard his story about playing football and how
Right.
it touched him. And your question earlier was, okay, how do you go from an all Baron to wanting to own a football team? And that story kind of explained it a little, right? It was something
Right.
that was always part of his formative upbringing, so he always held on to that moment. So
Right.
I get it too.
Right. So to be like, hey, this is a college experience. This is my college roommate. We were good friends. I'm going into this other industry, oil, XYZ, but I'm gonna go back. I want to buy a football team. This is the team I want. And when I do buy it, I'm pulling back. I'm getting my old connects. We're gonna run up the score, right? I was like, I get it. Also, Jerry Jones is pretty emotional. This dude cried a lot in that documentary, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's emotional for sure.
And I wasn't even aware of that. So like he's very emotional, very passionate. He cries a lot, especially with telling these stories. And I was like, wow, this, you could, again, I'm a non-Cowboys fan, so you have your own perspective, but just from looking at it, I was like, well, this is a man, right or wrong, however you may feel, this is a man who has conviction, and he has conviction with what he's doing for his business and his organization, and how he's trying to proceed in life with this. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm taking off my Cowboys fan hat for a second and being impartial. Impartially, you got to respect someone who he built that franchise up to what it is, right? It was a losing team. They didn't have the star power, any of that, and he is responsible for facilitating all of that. So yeah, I do. You do got to respect that and that kind of work ethic. So.
Right. So yeah. So then I think we can circle back. I want to revisit the Barry Switzer era, right? And bringing him on, and after winning 2 Super Bowls, they did not win a third Super Bowl in a row. They lost, and they didn't win, and I think that was kind of, honestly, I think Barry Switzer was in a no-win situation from my perspective. Like, if he would have won the Super Bowl, they would have said, well, he won with Jimmy Johnson's team, right? If he lost, which he didn't make it to the Super Bowl, they didn't win the Super Bowl, the narrative is he should have kept Jimmy Johnson, right? So I don't think Barry was gonna win no matter the circumstances, but not making it to the Super Bowl the next year, I think really kind of really set the tone, and it did validate. I think to an extent it did validate Jim Johnson, and at this point Jim Johnson was an analyst for the networks and commenting on games, and you could see his pleasure at his whenever he gave his opinion about how the Cowboys was doing now that he wasn't the coach. You could see his pleasure at taking shots at them and at their failures along the way, right?
Yeah, he had sour grapes for sure. Yeah.
but the tide does change. They do the next season after they make some new acquisitions. They bring Deion Sanders, primetime Deion, to the team. And
they bring him from the team that actually knocked them off.
Absolutely, yes. They brought Deion Sanders was on the 49ers prior to joining the Cowboys, and the 49ers is the team that knocked off the Cowboys, and Jerry Jones made it a mission to bring Deion Sanders on to the team the next year, which they did, and they got back to glory, and they won the Super Bowl, which I guess kind of completed the cycle, and kind of closed the loop on the overall drama in the story, right?
Sure, but us fans, we still think that was Jimmy Jones's team, even the whole season after, because
Right.
just I don't know. That's just how we feel.
It was still Jimmy Jones' team. Jimmy John's team.
Johnson's team.
Yeah.
Jimmy
Yeah. See, the two double J's is getting me tongue tied. But yes, fair enough. So thank you. As the Cowboys fan, you're like, nah, it was still Jimmy Johnson team, right? And I think, just from a team perspective and personnel perspective, I think there's other things we can talk about. Just bringing key strategic players to the team. I'm forgetting the name at the moment, but there was a player on the defense who used to be.
Oh, the player who kind of had those issues.
Yes.
Yes. I'm forgetting his name. It wasn't, because we talked about Tony Dorsett. It was yeah, I'm blanking on his name too, but it'll come to me.
Well, it'll come to us. But he was on the 49ers team and dominating on the defensive side, and really wrecking shop on the field, but he had a lot of personnel problems as well, and he was brought to the Cowboys, and that also changed the composition and culture of the locker room as well. Bringing him on, bringing Deion Sanders. So even when you have a good core team, you can't just rest on your laurels, right? You still have to continue tweaking and making adjustments to maintain that level of success and intensity, and we see it all the time, and that was also very instrumental to maintaining the team's success, because actually after the 49ers beat them that year, right, I could have easily seen where they just went into decline and never gotten back, because it's hard. The NFL is hard. It's hard to maintain success and consistency long term in the league. It's a very physical game. Your body don't work the same. Just it's so many factors that go into it.
Right. The competition is crazy, and then as famous and as part of American culture the Cowboys were at the time, San Francisco 49ers were right behind them. They were
right there,
just as popular, right there. Jerry Rice was the biggest star, so the Niners were no joke. So them losing was that could happen again. So.
Right. And so it could easily happen again. So the fact that they were able to come back the next year and win the Super Bowl, I think good. Making those adjustments to the team to get back. And business is good and booming again. So we've talked a lot about the team, and I don't want to just skip over all the other players. Clearly you have the storylines with Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, the contract disputes and negotiations and stuff. So I don't want to just ignore that, but I would like to focus a little bit more on the business deals that Jerry Jones also was creating for his team that other teams were not doing, and because of that, Jerry Jones was getting in trouble with the other NFL owners at the time.
The ownership.
Yeah.
So what exactly did you want to say about that? Because I know from my perspective, I just think all those moves, him going against the grain, that's his style. Mm-hmm. But that's just what led to this being the biggest franchise in all sports, right? He's not scared to make a deal. And I think not that other owners might have been scared, but they just may have not had that kind of vision, not seen kind of where this can lead to, what doors one deal could open up for the future. You know what I mean?
Right. I think so. For me, the thing that I've always been aware of the NFL owners, and that the way the NFL works as a business, you have the owners league and the commissioner, and you kind of have to play along with the other NFL owners and things like that, which is why whenever there's talk of a new owner or some new owner that's going to change up the look and the makeup of the league or how the owner's box looks, the more I watch this documentary, the more I'm like, this is why it's damn near impossible to get an outsider, right, to come in and be a owner of a team in a league, because it's a very close, tight-knit circle, and there are rules and just protocol on how you have to operate within the league and the other owners. And if they don't necessarily like your moves and whatnot, they will start taking action to get you removed, which is what was the case in Jerry Jones' situation. He was an owner, but he started making his own deals for his team and for his stadium and things like that that didn't align with how the NFL owners as a whole did their business deals. So usually there's like collective deals that all the NFL owners benefit from. Whether it's cutting these deals with Nike or not, excuse me, not Nike, because they didn't have a deal with Nike, but these these sports drinks companies, commercials, network, whatever deals is being done, it's usually done from a collective of all the NFL owners. And Jerry Jones was like, nah, that's cool, but I'm cutting my own deals for my team and for my stadium and for my players, which got him in some hot water, to the extent where they took him to court, right? They was trying to, or either they took him to court or there was a big hearing on whether he was going to be forced to sell his team and what have you. And here go Jerry Jones crying again, talking about y'all trying to take my team away from me, and if y'all do this, I know if I lose against y'all gonna take my team. And then he told them, but if I win, I'm coming for all of you mofos. And I was like, all right, here we go. It got real contentious, real.
Yeah, it got rough.
Ugly.
It got rough for sure.
It got rough. But you want to speak to some of these deals that he was making?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily remember too many of the specifics, but I do just in general his dealings. Right, he took care of his players. I think is what he did. He put them in position to become bigger stars, and as the faces of the franchises, these deals also, like, they all became rich just being Cowboys.
Right.
So
I
think that's what's really interesting about it.
Yeah, he definitely. I didn't even think about it like that. He definitely took care of his players. Even the dispute with like Emmitt Smith and stuff like that. The contracts was getting handled eventually, right? But I speak more to like the Nike deal, right? It's funny because now we think of Nike as just this global brand, right? But during that time, Nike was Nike, but it wasn't what it is right now, right? And for Jerry Jones to cut that deal with Nike caused a lot of controversy. Just a partnership exclusively with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that was also, if I'm not mistaken, that deal caused a lot of issues also because the rumor is that the deal with Nike is what funded the Deion Sanders contract, right?
That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And that is kind of what caught the attention of the other NFL owners. Like, come on now, like, you're taking star players. Where you getting this money from? Oh, you're getting this money from Nike off this other deal that you done cut. And, it was kind of like they were saying, like, this is a backdoor deal that's in violation of protocol, right? So it was things like that he was doing that wasn't the standard. Now it's pretty much, it's the norm now. He set the blueprint for that, but at the time it wasn't received very well, right? So deals like that, deals with the stadium, like he was doing his own branding deals with the stadium and network deals with Fox and Rupert Murdoch and things like that. So just all those, everything that we come to see that is standard in 2025, you got NFL games on different networks now and X, Y, and Z, whereas before it was only
streaming services.
Yeah. That was, I'm not saying Jerry Jones, he did definitely open the door for that to be a possibility of different networks, different broadcast rights, different deals with different sports athletic companies prior to, before everyone had to eat off the same plate, right? And Jerry was like, well, I think we can go over here instead,
Yeah, he's always, I mean, I guess it makes sense when you hear the full story, but he's always had this dream of being an NFL owner. So along with that dream, I'm sure came with the visibility, and I'm convinced in the back of his head it may not be as tangible as we see it today in 2025, but I think in the back of his head he always wanted the Cowboys to be the biggest franchise in all sports. Like I feel like that was always his end goal. So.
Okay, indeed. So, as a Cowboys fan, I'm assuming you would say they are the biggest team, or the biggest. What did you just say? The biggest team,
biggest franchise,
biggest franchise.
Yeah,
right.
I mean that's what the numbers always say, right? When Forbes comes out with their lists, they're worth the most and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean they don't win. They haven't won in 20 years, so it's crazy to think. But yes, apparently they earn the most and are worth the most out of any sports franchise in the world. So.
Indeed. Okay. So all right. So yeah. So with that being said, we've covered a lot because it's 8 episodes. So apologies to the audience if we jumped around a lot. There was a lot of things to cover over an 8-hour documentary, which I enjoyed. Any other moments or things that stood out to you in the documentary, whether it was business related, personality wise, or things like that?
Just one kind of thing I want to get your thoughts on. This documentary didn't shy away from the controversies, the drug use and the arrests and stuff like that.
The White House.
So I'm curious how you feel things like that. We've seen it, but in the early 90s and 80s, it was different. So I'm curious your thoughts on how things like that affect the bottom line, affect business. You know what I mean? Your perception of your team having these bad boy drug addicts, right? How does that affect your franchise and your bottom line?
Here we go. I feel like the world of sports and entertainment, I've always felt like it's not as cut and dry and as clean as we would like to believe. That's my take. Like, I'm not necessarily making an excuse for it, but at least from what I've seen in the sports world and what I've seen in entertainment and stuff like that, it's always interesting to me because I think we like to put on a very clean image of these things. And I get why, because football and if you're America's team, you have to, you want a clean image, right? You want a clean image. But at least from what I've seen in sports, drug use, and not just illegal drug use in the locker room by doctors who are prescribing these things to these athletes, who's injecting these athletes up with these things and sending them right back onto the field, right, to play. We've seen this so many times. To me, it's kind of like I feel like none of these people who are involved in this business are naive to the activities of their players. That's I'll leave it at that.
They're not.
I don't.
They're absolutely not.
I don't think they're naive to any of these actions. It's when these actions lead to headline breaking news, and when it leads to controversy, and they can't clean it up or cover it up anymore because that affects the bottom line. Because the actions of these players and how they were behaving, at least from the way it looked to me, it was an open secret. It was an open secret, especially in Dallas, right? And the police and everybody. It was an open secret that everybody was okay with until they weren't okay with it anymore. And once they weren't okay with it anymore, then that's when it started leading to the downfall and the downside of things and impacting the bottom line. But when the activities was happening, it didn't seem to really be impacting the bottom line because everybody was okay with it. So I don't know if I really answered your question. I don't know.
You did actually. You said basically like what you just said. You said people turn a blind eye to it when it's convenient, and then when it's not, they don't.
They don't. Yeah. So that was kind of my take on it. And yeah, this is we would probably have a whole nother episode just to speak on a lot of industries where the image is to be cleaned up, but there's so much craziness happening behind the scenes, and it's kind of like it's tolerable. It's tolerated until it's not anymore. So that's my take on that. Yeah. How about you? I mean, I do appreciate that they didn't shy away from the controversy, which I
Me
really
too.
appreciated. And I also appreciated that the players didn't necessarily shy away from it. They spoke towards it, and because it was all in the headline news. I didn't realize how much it was in the headline news at the time. Again, my perspective and what I was, the type of things I was exposed to at that age wasn't late breaking news on the personal lives of these players, but it was all over the headline news. So when those things start happening, it's clear why things start falling apart, right?
Yeah, it's clear, and it's also predictable when we have the privilege of hindsight. So
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I did want to just refresh the player name is Charles Haley. That was the
Charles
pass.
Haley,
Yes,
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 yes, that was who we
the
were talking
pass
about,
rusher
right?
on the
Who
team.
also came from San Fran too, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he came
If
from
I'm not
San
mistaken.
Fran. So
Yeah.
Jerry was picking players from San Fran like it wasn't nothing, just to build his dynasty.
He was
So,
like, they beat me. All right,
yeah,
we're gonna get the
we'll
ones
get the
that
one.
can help me win.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah. So I think, well, we did cover a lot. And there's probably more that we've missed. Just in regards to this series. But I will say this. The thing, I don't necessarily think it's a business thing, but when they were showing the footage of the football games, especially the one against the 49ers, and the game where the field was muddy and patchy, and it was like a dog fight, right? Um, and I don't know. I've watched football since I was a kid, and the way the footage of the games was shown in this series, at least to me, I don't know. It just really, it it, it put it in a different light. Like it changed how I looked at football games. Actually, um, like we
In what
all.
regard? Like you kind of like, yeah. In what way?
It just felt like I always know football is a violent game. That's never been lost on me. Football is a violent game. There's a lot of injuries. It impacts your body way after. I'm not just talking about during the game. After the game is done with you, right? There's a lot of physical implications to it, and we see it all the time. And the drugs. Legal and illegal, which is a wild thing because these players are using illegal drugs while also being pumped of legal substances,
Legal drugs.
right?
Yep.
It's a wild concept. But when I'm watching the footage, I don't know, it just felt a little bit more. It felt less polished, and because the footage of these games felt less polished, it just felt more, I guess, more in your face and real, and it was just like, ugh, you know what I mean? It's just like, wow, you're really doing a lot to your body for the sake of these games, and to claim bragging rights and to be considered the best of the best, and I don't, for me, it's not necessarily me judging them for these choices, but it just made, I don't know, it just was like, oh, it's not nothing, it's not anything that I wasn't aware of before, but I guess seeing it the way it was put in this documentary, for me at least, I think it enhanced it a bit more for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. Yeah, you kind of
Yeah.
saw the behind the scenes of
Yeah.
all that. Okay,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah. But overall, I'm assuming I'm gonna actually your take as a Cowboys fan. At the end of the day, you know, are you giving separate ratings from a business perspective and then from a Cowboys fan perspective, or?
Nah, I'll give it one combined
All right.
score
Let's
based
hear
on
it.
all of my
All
perspectives.
right. Fair.
And it was good. I think it was a B, a solid B. I
Mm.
like, I was, like I said, I was apprehensive to go down memory lane and relive the good times because we have to sit in the bad times now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was just so interesting. It was just hearing Jerry's history, how he
Mhm.
started, that
Mhm.
really engaged me. I was really very interested in his oil days and how it made him into who he is today. So yeah,
Absolutely.
overall I liked it. They didn't shy away from the controversies.
Mhm.
And from the business side of things, I would have even loved to hear a little bit more about the back end of stuff and some of the deals he's made, like the stadium deal,
Mhm.
AT&T Stadium, right?
Mhm.
And stuff like that. Just how he was able to facilitate some of those things. But overall, great. I liked it. It was a B.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I hadn't thought about it in regards to rating, so I'm gonna shy away from giving it a rating at the moment. But I will say, for me, I'm not a Cowboys fan, and I just was interested in just seeing what it was about. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't expect this to be a business lesson. I didn't expect pick up on the business ideas and the lessons. So I really enjoy that. And as a football fan, I enjoyed hearing the stories and the different perspectives of them building themselves up to be a championship. So it was like the business side of things, but even the lessons on what it takes to build a championship team, I think it's on par with what it takes to build a good team, to build a successful business, right? The personalities,
100%.
Yeah, the personalities, the structures, the skill set that you got to be mindful of, the egos clashing, all that good stuff. And then the ultimate failure of a business, when things go left, when things start going wrong. Sometimes so much success. It's like the story of, what is it, Icarus? You fly too high to the sun, right? And
too close to the sun.
Yeah, too close to the sun, and then you start flapping and the wings ain't there anymore. And that's definitely what happened to them. I would say because because it is, I think it's 8 episodes and they're about an hour each. I don't think our audience needs to watch all 8 episodes. If you're not a football fan, you probably are not going to be interested in watching all 8 episodes. But I would say at least I'd say at least the first 3 to 4 are good, stories to watch, and definitely get some insight on the business side of things for sure.
For sure, yeah. It definitely gets heavy into like the football of it all, like this game and this matchup as you get into like episode 2, 3, 4. Like you're in the middle of it, you get in the middle of the football. So,
yeah. So good talking to you, Sean. As always, good to get back into the flow of things and record another episode. So we'll get back at it soon, and thank you to the audience who are still rocking with us and checking us out.
Yeah, for sure. Go Cowboys.
Here we go. All right, so that's a wrap for this episode. We hope you enjoyed our reviews and thoughts on this documentary and series. Hopefully it provided you with some value and inspiration as you navigate through your business journey and life. As always, if you have any questions you would like us to answer on the show, shoot us a message on any of our social media channels. Also, don't forget to subscribe and share on Spotify and iTunes. See you again soon. In the meantime, keep grinding.
The Business Grind is for entertainment purposes. The opinions expressed are those solely of the host and guests. Please consult with a professional and exercise discretion before engaging in any business endeavors.
And I'm out here on the grind. I'm out here on the grind.